Welcome back to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Today, we're very honored to have Rob Jensen. He is the president of Voss Lighting, and Voss is a company that is focused on lighting design and services. Started in 1939 by Henry Voss in Lincoln, Nebraska, when lighting specialists were a rarity in the industry. From 1939 to 1976 was when Michael Voss took the reins of Voss Lighting. It was then that the growth to the current 14 branches encompassing 16 cities throughout the United States took place. Those 16 cities are primarily in the central part of the U.S. from Minnesota to Texas, branching out to the southwest and the southeast in parts of the U.S. In 2017, Rob became the president of Voss Lighting and Michael the chairman of the board. He started in Voss Lighting at the opening of the Dallas branch in 1985 and lived there for 5 years before moving back and taking on the role of vendor relations, negotiating annual programs, handling products, and pricing. His role was primarily in this area, while also learning all facets of the business. The journey involved being on the management team, becoming the VP of products and pricing and purchasing, and now the president. 2008 was a pivotal year for Voss as well as the whole industry with the disruptive technology of LEDs. They arrived on the scene. 5 years later, they made changes towards a turnkey process of selling projects. That's right, like a lot of us. Probably a lot of
Yep.
rebates in there too. Since then, it has been their focus. The company continues to evolve down the path and growth area of project-based services through lighting knowledge, and I think a lot of us do that here at Nailed. But before we open up the conversation with Rob, we got to take it down to Long Island, New York with the gangsters at Satco, Greg Garrett. Go to satco.com, buddy.
Hey, you need an A19, a par 38, a wall pack, a flat panel, an under cabinet light, a decorative light, a socket, a canopy, and an exit sign? Do you? Maybe someday? You can go to Voss Lighting, you can go to Premier Lighting, you can go to Atlas Lighting, or you can go to Satco. They're like a lighting distributor. They've got everything. That's our job, is to fill that need for someone. But from a manufacturer side, not a lot of people can do it, but Satco can.
The gangsters, satco.com. That's right. Do the right thing, do the right thing with Satco. And of course, you want to hang out with Satco. Atlas Lighting, Voss Lighting, Premier Lighting, all those really people that really understand lighting from its past to now where it is today. You can come down to the Nailed Convention. That's right. I was going to say Austin, but it's actually Dallas, Texas. I don't know why I was going to say Austin, but
Yep.
it's in Dallas, Texas. That's right. America's Lighting Convention is happening. Join us. Come on down. NAILD.org. What's happening at Voss, Rob?
A lot of things. We just closed out our fiscal year June 30, so you set everything back to zero and you start over again and
Mm-hmm.
grind out another year. So it's a day in the life of a lighting distributor in these days. So, but things are good, and the work is always available. Lighting, I always am encouraged by the word, the concept of lighting. Quite frankly, everybody needs it. It does still burn out, irrespective of the issues of what people say that LEDs last forever. It's a fallacy that I've heard you guys speak toward. Um, they do burn out, and there's always a need, and there's always, now instead of our history is more on that MRO side for that up until whatever that 2008 year was. That would have been an MRO was our primary function, replacing light bulbs, ballast, and those things. We quite frankly hated fixtures in the old days. We disincentivized selling fixtures until LED rolled around, and then we changed our tune on that front. So,
And
but it's
with your
unique,
MRO
and it
business, oh, sorry.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
With your MRO business, I know you guys are in 14 locations, Mike mentioned at the beginning. Um, did you do a lot of it through state contracts and government contracts? And I mean, I know you're dealing with all sorts of types of customers, but did you have a lot of that?
Sure. Yeah, our mix of business over the years is a lot of people think that's all we do with state business. It really wasn't in the early days, way back in the 70s, 80s. That was probably 90% of our business. But as we I took on and went into the branch kind of function, it balanced out. It was maybe 35 to 40% of our business, and the rest was what we call down the street, just in the market you're at, calling on every mom and pop shop to the 10-story building and up, and then later, even in that year, we always kind of dabbled in national accounts, and it became a portion of our business and still is to this day, albeit still not, I wouldn't say it's more like 20% of our business. And then the other, fixtures and projects and is taken over most of our business in a mix of products anyway. Yeah, because back in the old days, Greg, light bulbs and ballast was 90% of our business, in the MRO days. And that's all we sold, and people look at you funny. We belong to AD and the full line guys go, "You make a living selling light bulbs?" And everybody thinks of an A19. I can say that with you guys because you know what an A19 is. They still don't even know what an A19 is, kind of thing. But they just think of an A19 and how do you make a living selling an A19? But no, there's a whole lot of light bulbs out there. And, way back in the day, you had miniature lamps, you had photo and stage and studio lamps, all those things that we all grew up with that fell into the camp of lighting. And all that's now, gone by the wayside. So you just keep evolving and changing.
Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of people, independent lighting distributors in nailed had much higher margins than the average electrical distributor out there. And, those businesses where I would call them like a Voss Lighting, an Atlas Lighting, Premier, these three companies that are on this thing right now, would have been like pseudo subscription businesses. And what I mean by that is that, it was the revenues were very predictable. You knew how much you were going to sell every month. Maybe it was up or down 5%, but it was high profit, and it was the same customers that were used to paying you on a regular basis, and you had these customers for decades and decades sometimes, and they would pay you within the terms, and those businesses were very valuable. I would say that a distributor in let's say a 1990s pre-LED lighting distributor, that was a valuable business that could be sold to someone else, and that person could take over that business and there, from owner to owner, because of the way that light bulbs were ordered, the way that they burned out, the frequency and the knowledge people had. Now you got to eat what you kill, Rob. And
exactly right.
It's not as valuable.
No, and it's changed, but it's interesting you say that though, Mike, because in the same sense, you still see, we just saw Frontier Lighting get bought up by a full line guy, and some of the other lighting specialist guys are being bought up by the full line guys. Everybody recognizes the need for a lighting specialist in the industry, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future because obviously COVID changed the whole world and every concept with it. But the reality is, there's always a need for lighting, and there's always going to be a need for lighting. It's going to change, I think, going forward. We're all having to do more with less, but with that comes those bars of what's my bottom bar. In the early days of us and our structure, we went after everything. And partly of what you're saying, Mike, in the sense of the residuals that you got, every order, it all accumulated because the big three at the time controlled 99% of the market to a certain. You didn't have all the watered down effects of a lot of smaller guys. And they had all the inventory types that you typically needed in most of the marketplaces. So every order accumulated to make you more valuable to that manufacturer, whichever one you chose. And you as a business, you're right. It was like an insurance policy. Exactly. You just kept the business and flowing in and out of your companies. And in the same sense, when we started really growing and adding the branches and things of that nature, we figured out the model of how long does it take, and when's the payback and what's it look like. And so you could create a formula and what it looked like and make it work to grow your business. So
I used to walk door to door. Selling boxes of light bulbs. I used to go door to door to businesses, and I would write orders. And I could write 5-10 orders a day and make a living, like on my commissions from it. The people don't do that anymore. There's no way to do that. The first thing I remember, there was a company in Canada that was very strong. It was called Lightmore, and you mentioned that Frontier Lighting had been purchased. Oh yeah. We threw a party when HD Supply bought Lightmore. Oh man, we were so happy that somebody that knew nothing about lighting took that lighting company and bought it. We literally threw a party. So I think I think that there's a little bit of a period of consolidation and mergers and acquisitions right now it started in the manufacturing, now it's leaking down into distribution. People are trying to acquire knowledge through acquisition, but I don't think they're going to run a traditional lighting distribution business, which I think makes Voss and Premier and Atlas
No,
more valuable. What do you think, Rob?
I agree. And in fact, where I was going is the same sense is that as our bars have gone up on what can I maintain as a what's my average order, as a company, and what do I want them chasing? Our bar has gone up, and because of just the sheer nature of the business and the cost, and you eat what you kill kind of thing, Michael. In regards to that, I think there's going to be a little bit of maybe some resurgence. There's opportunity, I guess, for a
Mm-hmm.
small guy to get back into this industry and go down to do that door to door, because I can't service those guys. We've always had the Grangers and those guys out in the fields, yet their bars are higher than mine. Their
Mm-hmm.
scraps I can live off and make a living
Mm-hmm.
on, which we all have. If they were going to take over the world, they would have done it a long time ago, and they'll never will, because people still need service, they need answers, they need, and the product and the concepts that we try to sell and bring to the market is invaluable to them. Now, I can't do the whole market. None of us can. We
Mm.
we fit into where we are now. Sure, I dabble up in the high ends, and then I have still low, and but you find your sweet spots, you live in it, and that's the same thing. But I think there might be some, guys coming back into the market that want to do the door to door, because it's still gonna. There's going to be an MRO with LED, that wave's coming again, and people are going to have needs there. And for us, it's changing into more, instead of walking into the building, what's your light bulb needs, ballast, it's what's your fixture replacement program. Because I
Mm.
don't think the industry understands that concept, that what they're buying, there's nothing replaceable in it, because the
Mm-hmm.
industry is still too volatile. There's no standards. So it's educating people a little bit on that end as to what is your fixture. And it's a startling question in a way, but we understand the realities. And you guys, I've heard some of your podcasts in regards to some of that. The
Mm.
realities of drivers and the boards and all. There's nothing replaceable right now to speak of. It's not worth our time to chase it, quite frankly. It's a pain in the rear. So that comes into play as well, as far as opportunities in the future for our industry.
Mm.
So, without giving away any trade secrets, are you guys actually proposing like a group relamp, a fixture reinstall, if we call it that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I
Mm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, amazingly enough, you were already seeing, first generation fixtures and replacing with the next generation, whatever that may be. It may be Gen 4 in some cases, um, but yeah, some of that's already going on. You're seeing it in the lamps for sure. And definitely I was just down in San Antonio, and they had one that was that situation. The first gen fixtures were burning up. There's nothing to do with it except replace it, and that's what they ended up doing, replacing all the fixtures with new. And
Yeah.
so it's coming. It's differently. The waves are different because life is longer and things of that nature. But it's a huge industry. There's a lot of business out there to be had. So
I think, I couldn't agree with you more. And I just had this car dealership, and they're going to renovate the whole car dealership in 2 or 3 years or something like that. Guy's talking about a $10 million renovation. So I just want to fix those fixtures that are there. And I said, this is going to be really expensive to fix these light fixtures, bud. I'm telling you, you're
right,
going to be. So I think we fixed 8 light fixtures, and it cost them $6,000 to do this. Okay. And
right,
like
yeah,
we could have replaced those light fixtures for half of that, except they wouldn't have matched the ones that were
right,
in his dealership. These they
yep,
looked half like they were early LEDs. They kind of could have been induction. We had to take one down to see what it was.
oh
And
yeah,
yeah, so it's interesting that that guy could have spent half the money and just replaced all the fixtures with new. That's so
yep,
sad in a way, but it is what it is.
it is. Right. It's the cards we're dealt. We just have to deal with them, and bring a little bit of reality to the industry and to the people, that to help them understand. I think people are starting to get it, but I still think there's a misinformation or a misunderstanding of LED, that no, they don't last forever. And it's the weakest link, the
Mm,
driver, the LED chips themselves might go 50,000 hours, but the driver might only have a 10,000 hour life in it. So here you go. Now what?
mm.
So And that's where, as a company, we've come a long ways away. We pride ourselves on our age. 1939 is a long time to be in the industry. Now, I'll ask you guys a question. You probably haven't had this. I'll turn the tables on you. You guys know what? Do you know what BR stands for? And
Yeah.
like a BR reflector.
Bulge Reflector.
What's it stand for?
Bulge Reflector.
Okay. You know what it really stands for?
No. I guess not. I thought it was Bulge Reflector.
Let me. That's what we've commonly used it. Now, I'm going to hold up for you. You see that company right there?
Bird's Eye.
Bird's Eye reflector lamps. BR, he developed the Bird's Eye reflector, the BR lamp is where it really initiated. Now it turned into Bulge Reflector because it's got that bulge in it to pump more light out in it. And here's my lighting geekdom coming out because I love this lighting industry. It's a joy and a blast, And our history is, but our founder Henry Voss, that's what he started selling. When you're talking Greg going door to door, that's what he did. And if we have our history on our website, and it's pretty lengthy, but it's quite fascinating at the same time as to that history and what he did. Going into a storefront retail and. Back then they only had A19 or A23 or PS35s, those big globular bulbs, and 300 watts in a. Well, they came out with a 150 BR40, the Bird's Eye reflector, and it was actually developed by that company Bird's Eye, Clarence Bird's Eye, the Bird's Eye frozen foods that's still around today. That was the company.
Yeah.
And he wanted more light in his bunkers to shine on on the frozen foods. So he couldn't get GE or Westinghouse or Sylvania to make them for him. So he just started his own company, did it himself. And Henry Voss went around selling those to retailers all over Minnesota and down in Lincoln and around the Nebraska area and things. That was kind of our start and part of that history of, where we cut our teeth on, always in that specialty lighting arena. So it's I just thought I'd turn the tables. I thought I'd have fun.
Yeah,
to see what
that's
you know.
good.
Now you know something more.
I knew you were a lighting dork, Greg. I knew he was a lighting dork because of all the catalogs behind him.
Oh yeah. I still got
exactly
a few,
right.
but not that many.
I cleaned it up a little bit for this podcast, so what you're not seeing is it would be amazing. So
for those listening and not watching, Rob's got a whole bunch of what looks like to me very old lighting catalogs, the old binders, and that you'd have the catalog inside, and then the suggested retail price in yellow and all that stuff. Yeah, he's got it all there. In the background.
Yeah, it's and it's a museum in my office, quite frankly. Well, you see behind me, back on that shelf.
Yeah.
Or right below the deer, that is a G96 stage and studio lamp that won the Academy Award for Technology in 1958. I got this from a guy that I told him, if you ever get rid of that, I'll buy it from you, and he graciously gave it to me. And I'm proud to have that thing. It's so big. I mean, the thing, it's well, you guys can do the math. It's a foot plus in diameter, so the thing is huge. And it was what they used to light the stages at the time. So yeah, it's a wonderful industry, to say the least. So
you guys have the whole history there. Got to go check it out sometime.
Oh, there's it's quite, I could go on, and I won't bore you, but but lighting guys understand, and it gets in your blood. It's hard to get out. So
I have a T17 Power Groove sitting behind my desk. I love it. It's so fat, and it's got the grooves in it. It's like I just love that light bulb. I also like the way low pressure sodium bulbs look really cool to me. Like if you pull out an old LU, what is it? What was it? SOX 90 or something like that, and you pull it out. That's a really funny looking technology right there, man.
Yeah, it was. We still have one that'll light up downstairs just for the sake of it. So, but yeah, it's always interesting.
All right.
So yeah, the industry changes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you have thanks. 14 locations. Omaha is the headquarters.
Lincoln's actually the headquarters. Lincoln.
Oh, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, okay. Lincoln, Nebraska, which is where I'm at right now.
Nice. And when was the last new market you entered? What year do you think it was? And what market?
The last market, yeah, you got to love those occupancy sensors, Greg. Uh,
Nice. Yeah,
the
that's
last
gives
market,
energy and it
yeah,
turns off.
the last market we entered was Colorado. I think it was Colorado. Let me look at my map here real quick. Um, yeah, it was Colorado, the Denver market. So, and I don't remember the year. I think it's about 10, 12 years. We haven't opened up in a market in quite a while. That's something that we're relearning because, like I mentioned before, the formula for opening branches when what we did MRO wise was one thing. Now, to your point, Michael, in regards to what business looks like and eating what you're shooting kind of thing, it's a different formula that we aren't as comfortable with. What we're experimenting or looking at right now is just, can we open up and do it in reverse before we go open a branch, hire people, put all the investment in at the front side of the equation. Now we're looking at, does it make sense to work our way into a branch and remote have salesmen and things of that nature? That's what we're kind of experimenting with and trying, and doing it in reverse of what we've done in the past. Get the salesman out there, because the stocking and things of that nature as a job to job is different. It's so much stranger walking through our warehouses because there's more space for dedicated to jobs and projects than there are to the stock and flow of products out there on the shelves. So, and that's what we're experimenting with more recently.
The only way I would do it, like I would never put a flag in the ground. So I've always been, because I entered at the beginning of I filled out a rebate application in, I don't know, 2001 or 2000 or something. Guy was going from T12 HOs to T8 HOs. Wow, what a time, right? Big savings, buddy. Big savings there. So anyway, but I filled out that rebate application we did, but I always felt like it's very difficult to this project business it's not like you're not investing in your customers in the same way you were with MRO. Once you got a customer buying from you and they started to buy from you, and they kept buying from you. And so the only way I would do it would be to buy another lighting distributor in a market that had low penetration of LEDs. If that would be the only way I would do it.
Yeah. And that's we'll see. Time will tell as to what that really looks like and whether that formula works or not, kind of thing. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of lighting guys out there. And then, how do you figure out the penetration of LEDs in a market anymore? Sometimes I don't even think that the major manufacturers even know because it's been proliferated with so many of the smaller green creatives and Sadcos and other guys out there that are coming into the market that waters down the overall who's keeping track of the numbers like they used to.
There's no numbers. There's no reliable numbers in lighting anymore. You're right about that.
Yeah, I know.
There isn't.
So it's hard. Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
There's a lot of things that have changed. So
Do you think I think one thing that I don't see ever changing, there's a lot of talk and a lot of online presence and for certain companies, but lighting seems like it's always going to remain to some degree market based. Like to have true success, you need to have a presence in the market. Do you guys agree or disagree? Where are we at with that?
yeah, no, and that gets to a little bit what Michael was saying. You do have to establish a beachhead and get there. It's just how do you make that happen and how quickly can you turn around? Because obviously relationships, it takes time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight. We've been fortunate to be in most of our markets for 10 plus years at this point, and way ahead of the curve of most of what's gone on in regards to the changes with LED and the what's forced us into so many changes that the industry's scrambling to figure it out and understand it. So you're right, and I think that's part of that equation, that you're trying to figure out the math of how long can I have a beachhead only, or do I go full branch, and how does that work in total? So
I would, you asked both of us, so I would say that, you were shopping recently and you were asking me for my advice, Greg. and
Yeah.
you were looking online. You're going to buy something online, and I said, why don't you go to a local shop in St. Paul that's a professional, and then they can help you because you're not buying something for $100. You're buying something for $3,000 or $4,000, right? And you're looking
Right.
online and you're going to, Amazon and all that sort of stuff. Because as lighting distributors, we're very critical. We laugh at things sometimes what the customers buy on Amazon and on websites and so. And so I believe there'll always be a regionality to lighting simply due to its complexity. And as things become more complex, what you find is that knowledge becomes more valuable, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're going to see an inversion in the world of distribution where we're going to go from sellers of products to sellers of knowledge, and that lighting distributors are going to be knowledge workers, and in a way we always were, but now other people just won't want to get involved with something that complex, like repairing the driver on a fixture in a dealership where they don't want to fix the fixtures. Everyone just left the room and said, "You're on your own, buddy." And then
Right.
I come in and be okay. Well, this is how much it's going to cost. Are you okay with that?
Right.
Okay, great. And so I think that there's going to be a power in knowledge, and that knowledge will be regional because it takes so long to learn it. And that's why Nailed is around trying to create a whole bunch of different kinds of training programs for people. But even training
Yeah.
programs don't replace experience, Rob. And
No. Yeah. You're
years
exactly
in,
right.
yeah, years in the
Yeah.
business is
I
something
mean,
that's tough to compete with.
yeah. Unfortunately, it'll be interesting to see. I'm a 38-year geek in lighting and don't plan on retiring too soon yet. I've still got a few years under my belt, and yet I don't know if we're going to see. We're a company that we got quite a few 10. Our average employee is 10 years plus at this point, and but yet at the same time, I'm not sure if that's going to be the pattern. As to just seeing what the workforce looks like and what's coming, and whether they just love it for the sake of loving it, kind of thing, to gain the experience of what you're talking about, Michael. That'll be you know now there's some experience. I can bore you with experience on incandescence, HID, PARs and all that kind of stuff, and fluorescence, and who cares? No one's out calling me asking how's the alto capsule work in a Phillips lamp kind of thing anymore.
Yeah, I want to hear about
They're
ceramic metal halide.
right. You're not getting those calls. At best you're getting those calls to say, what is this, and then what can I get in LED?
Yes, yes.
That's about the extent of the what's in the old to moving forward into the new of LED. So, but yeah, experience. You're right. It does count for something, and that's where I think we're reaping the benefits of that. Even though, like I mentioned, fixtures for us is a newer game. Yeah, we've been doing it now for about 12 to 15 years, somewhere in there, and really embracing it. I mean, we've got it in the sense of we have a lighting agency within our company that does what lighting agencies do, because with my exposure in 14 branches, trying to get 14 rep agents that all agree to do business with me is like pulling teeth. That ain't happening.
Mm.
So we had to develop our own ways of doing the AGI layouts and specifying and looking at cross referencing and all that kind of stuff. And so we've just done it in house and are handling those types of things to expand where and what we're doing in the field. So then, to your point, Michael, earlier, in the sense of the experience, I have to keep a core of guys that understand it. I don't
Mm.
have to have everybody having all that working knowledge all the time. It'll come over time as long as they stick around. But if I've got a good core of people that can handle it, that seems to have been a model that's worked well for us.
One of the errors that I think, and Greg, maybe you can jump in on this one too, is Rob, is like a lot. What you'll see is you'll get a resume from somebody maybe in their late 20s or 30s or whatever, and they'll have 10 lighting companies on their resume or 6 lighting companies or whatever. That's not experience. I hate to say it. Like in
No,
my
no,
opinion, that's the you're starting over and starting over and starting over again. How
right.
are you dealing with the human resources? You say the average employee is 10 years with you guys. Are you having trouble finding new people? Are they interested in
Oh,
lighting? Do they stick around?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, that's a worldwide problem. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know where you don't hear that problem going on with just finding good employees. And you get a lot of it's not there's not a lot of shine and polish to our industry. As
Mm.
the electrical, like I mentioned with the AD, and we have small groups and peer groups that we get together with and things of that nature. And it's the same thing. There's nothing fancy and grandeur about selling lighting, selling electrical, selling whatever. You hear it from every industry, the trucking industry, the electrical contractors industry. You got more retiring out than we have coming in because it's hard work. But I think there's opportunity beyond belief to make good money, quite frankly. But it's just finding people that really want to stick to it and have a love for it. And so, what are we doing? It's the same process that we've always done. But you're right, we're having turnover on the lower end of that
Mm.
10 less. That's where I don't know if we're going to see 20-year employees. I think my scale is only going to keep shrinking as far as that 10-year average right now. In fact, it is, as people retire out and things of that nature. Um, and the reality is we'll have to deal with it. And I don't know the answer quite yet on that one, Michael, because it's interesting in regards to what that answer looks like. It really comes down to the people, whether they
Mm.
want to. And it may come where, do we hit financial straits enough where people settle down and have to work? Whereas right now it seems like it's still too optional. And it takes a world depression going on to get people back in the saddle of, it probably is that way. There's nothing new that goes on in the world that hasn't gone on before. The mergers and acquisitions, that's going on now, it's all cyclical. You've got things, and then new upstarts come, and it all goes again, and it's just going to be the way our industry always has and always will be. In the meantime, you just got to adapt, and figure out what you need to do. And sometimes that's more individualistic, and sometimes there's group things best practices you can try too.
To touch on a little bit of brands, you guys I know have historically always been strong with Philips, or at least as long as I've known you. But
Yep.
do you still feel a need for that presence to have a strong brand behind you, or where are you guys at in that terms?
Yeah, yes, I would say that's still important for us. I don't know if it's as important. Our history goes with us, and our volume. Using the big guys and having a big guy in your corner helps, especially going through what we just went through in COVID. You can
Mm.
leverage those types of relationships to help you get things when things are tight. And that's been something that we're very loyal in our manufacturers and slow to bring on new. Um, Quite frankly, we did more with Sylvania way back because of stage and studio and photo lamps, miniatures, and things of that nature, and lamps even at one time. Because that company I told you about, Bird's Eye Reflector Company, they ended up getting bought by a company called Wabash. Wabash got bought, and ultimately they ended up getting bought by Sylvania. So we merged into Sylvania kind of by default. And in the same way, we got, yeah, I'm telling you all these goofy, weird things, but Kenrad was a company we dealt with as well. It stood for Kentucky Radio. They manufactured lamps down in Kentucky. It was a plant owned by Westinghouse. And we could buy from Kenrad, but Westinghouse would have nothing to do with us. We
Hmm.
took the state of Nebraska with Kenrad lamps. They couldn't produce the lamps, and so they'd actually ship Westinghouse lamps to us to fulfill the state of Nebraska
Yeah,
contract.
lighting is so
And so
weird like
one thing,
that. Lighting has
yeah,
so many
yeah,
weird
and
things like
so
that. Yeah.
yeah, and so that history led us into. They finally threw up their hands and said, "Okay, we'll set you up with Westinghouse," and that's how we started our relationship with Westinghouse, because Sylvania didn't at that time, and Westinghouse did, and then Westinghouse gets bought by Philips, and we've been with Philips, for as long as I can remember, longer than me actually. So it's but yes, I think there's something to be said about loyalty. I think there's still a place for it, but where I was going, where it changes a little bit on the fixture side of things, is fixtures are a different animal. We were loyal to Philips because of they had 90% of everything we needed to serve what markets we were in and who we sold to and things of that nature. Fixtures is a whole new dynamic that it's tough to be loyal to any one guy. There's more of them to a certain degree, between Acuity, Genlight, Cooper, Phillips. Phillips is Genlight and Cooper, but Cooper's still separated from them. LSI and other guys out there that nobody makes 90% of what you need. And then you get into all the specialty fixture companies that do even further advance that. So it's that's where I think it changes. But I think people understand that more realistically than what the loyalty factor was back in the day.
And so with your
Greg, but hang on a second. I want to talk about the loyalty here thing for a second. We talk about loyalty to distributors, but like if you went to a nailed convention in 1996 or something like that, what you would see is there was three groups. There was the GE people, the Sylvania people, and the Phyllis people, and they wouldn't go to each other's parties.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
we did. I would.
Yeah, but from my perspective, like loyalty goes towards me actually. Like I haven't found that the problem is my loyalty to them. I found the biggest problem is the other way around. Like as they've become desperate over the last LED boom era, the manufacturers are the ones that have become disloyal, not the distributors.
Yeah. And you're right. You're right, Michael. I mean, it is a two-way street, and I think that's where have our manufacturers been consistently loyal to us? No, nobody is. I mean, when it comes right down to it, and that's where I think the game has changed. There's still, it's probably more in our DNA, and I'll get into that here in a second as to why. But as to our loyalty to certain manufacturers, but it has reciprocated enough that it creates that loyalty on both sides of the spectrum. Because when I hate to say it, but here's the harsh reality: it's all about what you bring and how big you are. I mean, that's what they're looking for. There's no way I could go to Cooper, which I do no business with to speak of, and say, I want to. They wouldn't even talk to me. I don't. They have no reason to talk to me because to build a relationship takes time, and like you talk about relationships between, manufacturers or between us and customers, kind of thing. That still takes time. It takes time within manufacturers, and quite frankly, the industry's had so much turnover. I hardly know people at Phillips to a certain degree because it's changed so much, and yet I know enough to be dangerous. But it's changed from the old days by far because they've squeezed their people down too and doing more with less. And so you maintain what you can. You're always looking for new relationships and people, and that's just the nature of the business as well. But I would agree with you. And with that, here's a little bit of our DNA. I mentioned 1939, and part of our company that's I'd say would be rather unique is we use the phrase "sell to tell." We sell to tell people about lighting and light bulbs and all sorts of different lighting and all that thing. But one of the facets that we take seriously as a company is we sell to tell about our Lord Jesus Christ. And I did this for you guys just for everybody's seen that at a ball game, a hockey game, or everybody holds that up, and what's that mean? And but the verse behind that says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life." And these principles they come out of the Bible, and that's where John 3:16 comes from. And it's a verse that we sell to tell people about what Jesus Christ did on the cross, because it is an important facet and it's very strong in our DNA as a company, back to Henry Voss, to Mike Voss, to myself, and many others. Does everybody believe that in my company? I don't know for sure. A good portion do, but it gives us an eternal perspective in our industry that's different than just selling light bulbs. We have a calling above and beyond just selling lighting. There's a verse that talks about that Christ is the light of the world, and it's always fondest to my heart when we talk about something being the light of the world, and we sell lighting. The irony is too good to be true, but it is a reality, and that all begins with that verse and the realities of what is going on in the world. Our world is so topsy turvy right now. What's up is down, and what's down is up. But the reality is, there's what happens, because we all face the same ending. We're all going to die. What happens after that? And
Well, let me
that
ask
that
you. Let me
reality
ask you.
doesn't.
I got to ask you something.
Yeah.
Are you
Go.
a specific religion? Like I'm a Catholic, but
No.
are you like a Presbyterian or something? Are you just a
No.
evangelical
I'm just a
Christian?
Bible believing. Evangelical Christian.
Okay,
And
okay. I have a
and
question for you.
yep.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you tell people to be like Christ?
After they're saved, sure.
Yeah, you know what happened to that guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that could happen to us, Michael. The
I
reality is
just I
what you
just want to
believe.
I just
Yeah.
because a lot of I
That's the
find a lot of
important.
evangelical Christians they go around. We got to be more like Christ, and I always go, "Whoa, hang on a second here, bud," because
Yeah.
like follow
You
him
got
to
to count
where?
the
How
cost.
far? How far do I follow him? All the way to the cross and get crucified like him?
Yep.
That's a calling,
And it
brother. I
takes
don't
that.
know if everyone's got the
It
guts
is.
for that.
It is. Yeah, well, that's where I think it separates, as the Bible would say, the sheep from the goats.
There you go.
Those who truly believe will, and it is because, quite frankly, even what Christ did on the cross, even if we do die, the reality is where I'm going after that is eternity. Now,
Mm,
that's eternity with God in heaven, or it's eternity without God in hell.
mm,
And that's not a place I desire anybody to go to. And that's what drives that message for us as a company, and is part of our DNA, that it's a higher calling. And so that's part of that DNA of loyalty. We're loyal to our Lord as we are loyal to our manufacturers, our customers, and things of that nature.
mm,
Maybe to a fault, some people give. Running a business. I mean, I've spoken on this before in regards to business and Bible.
mm-hmm.
There's verses in the Bible, and this is just common sense stuff. Differing weights are an abomination to the Lord, and a false scale is not good.
Mm,
We all understand cheating,
sure.
lying, that's not right. Well, those are biblical concepts that come out of it. Here's a verse, Michael. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we shall go to such and such a city and spend a year there, engage in business and make a profit. Did you know that was in the Bible?
Sure. Did you know that to who
It,
to what is it? To him who has much more will be given, and he shall
yeah,
have an
exactly.
abundance. And to him who
Yep.
has not, even what he has shall be taken away.
Yep.
That's a tough one, buddy. Listen,
Yeah.
I think I think people, if you're listening to this and you haven't read the Gospels, forget about the rest of it for now. Just go read the words of Christ. He's a badass, actually. If you read his words, you'll find out and you understand what a Pharisee is. You'll see why he was
Oh, yeah.
crucified. Well,
Yeah.
amen, brother Jensen. Let's
Thank you
let's
for having me on.
yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. Can you believe we've spoken for 45 minutes? Um,
No, that went fast.
it went fast. We're going to go from Christianity down to the gangsters at Satco, Greg Eric. Go to satco.com.
We talked about it today, needing all that different product that a distributor can bring, but they can actually bring it from the manufacturing side, everything you need.
Yeah, and if you want to come on down to the NIL, are you coming to the NIL convention, Rob?
I am not. I cannot make it there. But I'll see if I can rearrange something. It'd be fun to meet you guys in person, quite frankly.
Yeah, maybe we
There
could
you
pray
go.
for the industry together, and I'm not joking about that. So come on down. If you
Yeah.
folks out
Well,
there, come down to the convention, naild.org. It's in September. Go to the website and you can register there. If you have light bulbs in a warehouse and people call you and you sell them to them, you're a distributor. Give us a call, join us. And you know what? Give back to the industry too. You can join some of our committees, Greg. They can get on the educational committee, the accreditation agency advisory committee, all these different things, tons of things NAILD's doing. So go to naild.org. God bless you all out there. Bye for now.